Hey, I'm Miranda. I'm having another autoimmune flare-up day, so my energy's kind of low. We'll get through this. Guess what I'm thinking about today? I'll give you a hint. It's like when you ask a member of the LGBTQ plus community, why don't you dress gay? Don't do that. Or, oh, you're wearing that outfit? It's a bold choice for somebody your size. It's microaggressions. I've been thinking about microaggressions. And I need to talk about them because there are those of us walking around giving people 1,000 little cuts every day, completely oblivious to the fact that they're doing it. They don't understand the implications of what they're saying or understand the impact those words have on other people. So today, you and I, me in this video, you in the comments, we're going to discuss what microaggressions are, their impact, and then I'm going to make an impassioned plea to you to please engage in some self-reflection, maybe get some self-awareness, because we all do it, and to figure out how to stop it. Fair? Let's get into it. So what are microaggressions? Well, the problem is they're very difficult to pin down. It'll be the difference between somebody at a job interview hearing, so you went to college? Or, so you went to college? Sometimes the difference lies in tone, and sometimes the difference lies in intent. My simplest answer as to the definition is this. Microaggressions are digs, just those little digs that people make through their actions or through their words that make you uncomfortable. You know those little thinly veiled insults that are wrapped up in compliments sometimes? That's a microaggression. You know, somebody wearing a Confederate t-shirt with a noose down the middle is meant to intimidate. That's a microaggression. That's just my soft Miranda definition. There's actually an academic one, and this is what it is.
Hello, my name is Katherine Partridge. Microaggressions are subtle statements, messages, and behaviors that reinforce, perpetuate, and demonstrate discrimination and prejudice against a person based on their status as part of a marginalized group. Think factors such as race, ethnicity, gender identity, immigration status, disability status, etc. And they're often rooted in power differentials.
Thank you, doctor. She defined it way better than I could. So let's just break it down. Microaggressions come in 3 unappetizing flavors. Microassaults are the very intentional digs or actions or slurs that are made against others. It's when people are deliberately trying to insult or hurt or just at you. Or they want to intimidate you. For instance, it's when wait staff deliberately serves white people before black people. I mean intentionally, not accidentally. A better example.
15 supporters of flying the Confederate flag are now charged with terrorism for a nasty July joyride. Members of the group Respect the Flag drove a convoy of vehicles with Confederate flags through a Georgia neighborhood where a black family was holding a child's birthday party.
It was an intentional form of intimidation, and it's also a microaggression because they could just claim they were exercising their rights to free speech. They could claim they hadn't actually done anything wrong till the guns came out.
Witnesses say the group shouted racial slurs and the guy with a gun threatened to kill the N-words.
That's the subject of a future video, maybe. Microassaults are the easiest to identify and to define because they're clear, they're overt. But the next 2 categories, not quite so easy to pin down. Micro insults. Those are those subtle little comments that intentionally demean another person or dehumanize them. They convey rudeness or bias or insensitivity. It's the demeaning of another person's heritage or identity. It's like when a coworker asks a colleague, "How did you get this job?" It's like that. They're often hard to pin down because if you don't hear the tone, how can you understand the implications? So in that example I just used, if you report the microaggressor to HR, how do you prove their tone? This is what normally wrecks our heads. This is when we walk away from a conversation going, did that person just insult me or did I take that up wrong? It's a whole problem. Micro-invalidations. They are subtle communications that exclude or nullify another person's thoughts, feelings, or lived experiences. For instance, in the United States, it's like when you have a white person that asks an Asian American person who has an obvious American accent, "So where are you from?" Which conveys the message that they are perpetual foreigners in their own land. That for some reason they aren't just a standard American, they have to be from somewhere else. As if somehow everybody in the United States, except for First Nations people, aren't immigrants or the grandchildren are immigrants. We're all some variety of immigrant. While micro assaults are overt, we know what they are, they're easy to identify. Micro insults and micro invalidations, they're tricky. The sad truth is we've all experienced microaggressions, but their impact is directly related to the power differential. Right or wrong, some people have more social power than others. In the Western world, men generally have more social power than women. White folks have more social power than minorities. Heterosexual people have more social power than non-heterosexual people. You know what I'm getting at. I could give you 10 more examples, but we all understand what it means for somebody with more social power to make a dig at somebody who has less social power. So you might ask, but Miranda, what's the impact of microaggressions? Like if I've accidentally microaggressed and I didn't mean anything by it, does it really hurt anyone? Yes, the answer is yes. Your microaggression could be one of 1,000 paper cuts that a person who has less social power than you experiences. But I can't explain the impact as well as a clinical psychologist, so I asked Dr. Elena McSwain to explain it to you.
Thank you, Miranda, for having me. I'm Dr. Lena McSwain, and I'm going to be speaking to you today about the effects of microaggressions. First, on ourselves and our self-esteem, and secondly, how it affects the human body. And so the first thing I'd like to touch on is the way that it can hit at your self-confidence, and that's losing appreciation for one's abilities and qualities. And why? Because if you are receiving onslaughts of messages that you're not good enough, that you don't belong, over time, you'll start to believe those messages, questioning yourself. Like, do I really belong here? Should I be here? Should I be going somewhere else? And that happens over the course of time when we're exposed to these assaults on our being. It can affect our self-esteem and also increase poor self-image. And guess what the big one is? Anger. If you are constantly being told that you don't belong, you're going to be mad. It's just what's going to happen. You can also experience trauma responses, specifically hypervigilance, and that's being very aware and alert to those possible threats coming towards you. Intrusive thoughts, meaning thinking about it when you don't want to. And avoidance, meaning you're staying away from the people who hurt you. An example of that are folks who don't want to go to office parties when they are the only representation of a certain group in a setting. That could be the only Black person who works in an office full of white people. They may not necessarily feel comfortable, especially if they've been receiving negative messages about themselves. Or somebody who has a larger body type and they're around folks with smaller body types, and that's pointed out a lot. There's a number of ways that microaggressions can affect us. Being in an underrepresented group doesn't have to just be about race, gender, sexual identity, ethnicity, nationality, body type. All of those things are factors into who we are, and they're pieces of our identity. And unfortunately, you can be targeted across those identities. Now, long-term effects of trauma on the body are devastating. Folks who have high trauma reactions also tend to have more health issues, specifically hypertension, as well as cardiovascular disease. When people microaggress against individuals, it can literally break their hearts.
Thank you, Dr. McSwain. She explains that far better than I do, and that's why I have these doctors on standby to help me. So why have I shared all of this about microaggressions with you? Because microaggressions convey bias. We tattle on ourselves when we microaggress. We share our innermost thoughts. I'm guilty of this. I went to a friend's house for a meal, and it was beautiful, and I had the nerve to look at her and say, "You cooked this?" It was rude, and it let her know that I thought she was incapable of cooking. Now, that was a more innocent example, and she forgave me. But it is much harder when you microaggress with somebody and your internal racial biases are revealed, or your internal bias against the gay community is revealed, or whatever is revealed. You need to watch your mouth. You need to examine your mind and your heart and figure out what you believe before you tattle on yourself. We can all stop hurting one another with these microaggressions because, as Dr. McSwain explained, they're hurtful. They have an impact. And just to drive this home, I'm sick of hearing two things. You are so beautiful for a Black girl. You didn't grow up in the inner city? Why is this even a thought in your head? Finally, I've shared this with you because we all need validation sometimes. We've all experienced an insult and thought, ooh, should I be insulted? Yes, sometimes you really should be. I feel like that was a lot of information. I hope that this has helped. I think we all need self-awareness about the subtle messages that we send, that we received, and maybe now we're all empowered to do better. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for all the support. You guys have done a lot of liking and sharing on our videos, particularly my son's videos, and I really appreciate it. Please consider, if you like these videos, subscribe on YouTube and maybe follow me on Facebook, but it's not compulsory. I'll chat to you soon. Bye.